The congressman used an important word there, proportionate.
Yes.
What does that look like this time?
Well, I think it would look something akin to what Iran had done to Israel, but I kind of think Israel's going to go big. I think Israel is thinking to themselves, we have an opportunity here. We have to reset deterrence. This is what we were most concerned about having lost on October 7th a year ago, and we need to make them fear us again. So I think they're going to go for military, conventional weapon sites, definitely. I think they need to take out ballistic missile sites so that when there's a retaliation back from Iran, there'll be fewer missiles to hit. Yeah. But I also think they're going to go for energy platforms and infrastructure, and they might go for some nuclear sites.
Well, and the concern, if they do that, is that that is perhaps the most escalatory move of all, because it's unclear what Iran will do next, which raises the broader question of everything we have seen Israel do up to this point and what we may see them do in response to what Iran did last week. Has all of that made the world more dangerous and Israel less safe than more safe since October 7th?
So I think it's a fair point, but I think from their perspective that they felt unsafe on at least these three fronts. Hezbollah, we already know the story in Hamas in Gaza, and of course they would say Iran is now taking shots at us for the first time in history from their own territory. And so while we can't eliminate them completely, I think they think we've got to severely degrade them. So if go for nuclear sites, that will be a big decision. I don't think they're optimally suited to do it, however. They really need the United States. They really need some deep, penetrating ordinances to be able to get into these mountains, to get to these centrifuge halls. But there might be some sites that are critical nodes or part of weaponization that they feel like, you know what, why don't we just try to hit it a little bit because we're going to have to come back again one day.
What does the U.S. have that Israel does not have? What bunker-busting technology would we use if it was a U.S. operation?
So I think you just nailed it. The bunker buster is generally called the mother of all bombs, the Moab.
That
is
the one.
Literally
we're
it.
We're not handing out.
We have not given them one. I don't think they've asked in a while. I don't think, certainly, the Biden administration wouldn't countenance the idea. Yeah. Not sure if they asked during the Trump administration. We may have an upgrade over the Moab, unclear totally, but it's definitely something a lot heavier than they have today. And they also have refueling issues and how much time over target. There's a bunch of complicating factors given how many sites there are.
Okay, so this administration hasn't given those to Israel, but this administration's only around for a few more months. Someone new will be sitting in the Oval Office come January. And one of them, Vice President Harris, sat down for an interview with 60 Minutes. It's set to air tonight, but this is a piece of what she had to say when she was asked about the U.S.'s relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu. Take a listen.
I think, with all due respect, the better question is, do we have an important alliance between the American people and the Israeli people? And the answer to that question is yes.
Not an important alliance with Prime Minister Netanyahu. So if you are the Prime Minister, in his fragile position within his coalition government, knowing that that is potentially who you could be dealing with in the United States come January, how does that change your decision-making now that there's no guarantee it will be another Donald Trump presidency that you've experienced before? So
I think, arguably, it makes them want to go faster and hit nuclear sites while they can. By the way, two in-the-center type Israeli politicians, Naftali Bennett, who was previously the prime minister, and Benny Gantz have also said things to the effect of, we're never going to get a better opportunity than now to hit some of their nuclear sites. That doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean they're not engaging in a little bit of politics themselves to stake out area to the right of Netanyahu. But I think it's a big factor going forward. I think even if it's Kamala Harris, he'll want to press the reset button at some point with the United States, and he has to keep that in mind. And it may cause him to go faster now while Biden's a lame duck.
So you've got a 4-week window, essentially, that you just laid out. How do you best use it?
I think they're going to hit Israel sometime. Israel will hit Iran sometime this week. I do believe there'll be a retaliation coming from Iran. The big question is, will they do as Iran has vowed that they will do, which is to hit oil facilities in the UAE, Saudi. They even added in I believe, Oman and Azerbaijan. If they try to do that, the United States would be more involved, I believe, in trying to knock these missiles down. But that would be escalatory. You may see another couple of cycles on the escalatory ladder before this begins to
That
calm
means
down.
we could have $100, $150 a barrel oil in time for the election, though, is it not?
I think it could definitely rise. I think that's always been a factor from the United States viewpoint, which is like, let's not let this get out of control because of the price of oil. And for many other reasons, we don't want it to escalate. But things are getting crazy.
Does Iran want to do that to the global economy and the U.S. economy specifically on the eve of the election, knowing that Iran, according to the Department of Justice, which has actually prosecuted people for this, is actively trying to hack into the Trump campaign, as we've seen, sow mis and disinformation online, trying to disrupt the American electoral process?
I think Iran would rather Israel not do it at all because this is their lifeblood. Oil is their economy. They haven't been sanctioned in a large way, at least in terms of the enforcement of the sanctions of late. And I feel like they're saying to us, don't hit our oil infrastructure, because that is when we would start escalating elsewhere in the region. They're trying to inspire fear on the part of the United States and in Europe that a big bunch of oil is going to come off market. So put all the pressure that you have on Israel so that they don't hit our oil infrastructure.
Kailey pointed us to the remarks from Kamala Harris about our alliance with Benjamin Netanyahu versus the people of Israel. Whoever the next president is will likely be dealing eventually with someone else in charge of that country. Donald Trump's approach versus Kamala Harris's approach means what difference to you?
So I think it's inevitable that Republicans in general and Trump in particular would give the Israeli people a wider berth. Trump has said as much, by the way. I was surprised that he actually said within the last few days that, of course, they should go after the nuclear sites. Of course, he's trying to be different than Biden and take the opposite position at any given moment. But that's a big step that he took there. That is greenlighting Iran, certainly after the election, to go after nuclear sites. I would be
Israel to go after
Iranian nuclear sites. I would be careful about that, by the way, because at the end of the day, once we're in a post-election situation, Trump isn't going to be there to bomb nuclear facilities. If he's for anything or against anything, it's endless wars, and he is not going to start a war, I believe, with Iran. He may try to take major players off the battlefield like he did with General Soleimani, but I think a big conventional strike against Iran is off the table.
Just quickly, as we have heard from Trump and a number of other Republicans, that this has all happened because this administration, the Biden administration, has been too soft on Iran. You mentioned sanctions enforcement just a moment ago. Isn't that a China problem? What role does China have in this conversation?
So the Trump team would say, and it's a fair point, that when they were in office, they went to our allies in Asia and said, please don't buy Iranian oil. Now, they also went to the Chinese. I don't think the Chinese were very cooperative, but as long as they were getting the Koreans and the Japanese and others around the world, it had a downward pressure effect on price per barrel. And so Iran had less discretionary funding to fund terrorists around the world. But it's a fair point, especially when you see that Russia has been kept afloat by China. These two are thick as thieves now, and they're going to bail each other out of every contingency going forward that we can put before them.